We are actually going to turn our attention back to a topic we've spent a great deal of time discussing throughout the year. I'm talking about redistricting. And yes, it is true, it is not the sexiest of topics, but it is critically important to how the political landscape will be shaped over the next year or so. This week, the state's highest court overturned a lower court ruling, thus negating lines drawn by the Nassau County Legislature's Republican majority. The Court of Appeals ruled that the legislature had ignored proper redistricting guidelines and therefore must go through the full process again. Now, why should you care about one county on Long Island, which isn't really even in our viewing area? Well, this ruling could have statewide implications for the redrawing of district lines statewide next year. And now state Democrats are saying it is a sign that the courts are on their side. Joining me now to talk more about this, the Senate Democrats' redistricting champion, he is Queens Senator Mike Gianaris, and he's joining us from New York City. Senator, thank you very much for being here.
Hi, Liz. Happy September.
Indeed. Happy September. Hopefully it will be less wet than August.
We can hope.
Right. So this is really a hyper-local issue that you are seeing through a statewide lens. And why is that? Because really it just seems like a loss for the Republicans in Nassau. Case closed. Goodbye.
Well, for two reasons. First of all, the Nassau Republicans are the state Senate Republicans. This was Senator Skelos' legal team who had been in the employ of the state Senate for the Republicans in the past. And it's the same people who will likely try a similar gambit with the state lines next year. They tried it in Nassau and they failed. And the more important point is the second one, which is the highest court in the state has made it clear that when lines are drawn for political purposes, where they're rigged for advantage of the ruling party, which is what happened in Nassau, they're not going to stand for it. And we think that bodes well for us going into the state's redistricting efforts next year.
You are speaking, of course, of John Ciampoli, are you not? And he is a former Senate GOP attorney who is now in the employ of Ed Mangano, who is the Republican Nassau County executive.
Right.
Right. Okay. So what was the machination that the Nassau Republicans tried to pull here, in your opinion?
Well, it's pretty obvious, and it was blatant, and it was called out by everyone from Newsday, which monitors that region of the state very closely, to good government groups, and on down the line. They literally took almost 50% of the population of Nassau and put them in new legislative districts. There were Democratic incumbents thrown in the same districts with one another to force them to compete with each other, and lo and behold, that was not the case for Republicans. And I think everyone agreed that were those lines to be put into effect, the Republican majority in Nassau would grow by great numbers. Fortunately, the court saw through that and said that we should draw lines to keep communities together in a rational process, much like we've been saying needs to be done at the state level. And rejected the efforts to seek a political advantage, to seek to increase their numbers politically and having no connection to what representation the communities deserve. And they were called out for it. They got busted, and the courts knocked it down. There's
also a timing issue here, right? I mean, technically speaking, the 2010 census came around, and you do this recounting every 10 years, and subsequently then you redraw the lines to more accurately represent the population shifts in the state. The Republicans were hoping to have these lines in place for this year's elections?
Right.
Okay.
They're nervous in Nassau that the elections in November will lead to the Republicans losing the majority and therefore losing control of the redistricting at the county level that would normally take place for the 2013 elections down there.
Right.
And so they tried to rush it through. The Nassau County charter and the laws make very clear that there's a process that needs to be in place, that the lines need to be established 8 months before the actual election. They didn't follow that, obviously, in this case, and the courts rejected what they tried to do.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing is that, of course, even if the Democrats take back the legislature, and it was, in fact, in Democratic hands until the same year that actually Tom Suozzi lost the executive's perch to Ed Mangano, the control of the legislature flipped back to the GOP. Mangano is going to be in office, and he's really going to have the final say. I mean, the legal battle over this is probably not over.
No, it's going to drag on, and this is our larger point that many of us have been making for the last couple of years. folks like Senator DeLon, who's been championing this on our side as well, is that the gamesmanship needs to stop when it comes to redistricting. It shouldn't matter if the Republicans control the legislature or the Democrats do or the county exec is of one party or another. Let's set up an independent process that transcends all of that so we don't have to worry about political concerns driving the issue of who represents the people of the state. It's a critically important, you pointed out in the beginning, it's not the sexiest of issues, but it has a profound impact on the people of this state. And if we could do it fairly, if we could do it in as independent a manner as possible with fair criteria, that would be best for everybody, and then we wouldn't have to worry about who happens to be on top at the right time of the decade.
Yeah, but the difference between Nassau County and the statewide situation is, of course, well, one of the main differences, you've got an ally, it seems, in Governor Cuomo. He says that if this isn't done in an independent manner, which of course it doesn't appear that it's going to be at the state level because LAT4 is moving forward, the legislative committee that is charged traditionally with redrawing the lines, then he's going to veto the whole plan. And it looks like, you know, Mangano was okay with this in Nassau, so why worry about it?
Well, because we'd like to see something done fairly, not just thrown into the courts, which is what will likely happen now that we have Governor Cuomo remaining as a great champion of redistricting reform. And the Senate Republicans ignoring his very clear position that he's not agreeing to any of the lines that LAT4 produces, we're heading to a situation very quickly that a court's going to be deciding this. That's not ideal. It's better than the status quo, to be sure, but it's not ideal. The ideal scenario going forward would be a truly independent process that would last not only for this reapportionment coming up next year, but off into the future. Let's make New York an example in the nation of how this should be done. This is an issue that's being played out across the country. It wasn't too long ago that Tom DeLay tried to do a mid-decade redistricting to elect more Republicans to Congress out of Texas, and he ended up going to jail because of it. So there's a lot of problems when you politicize the redistricting process. Let's just remove the politics as much as we can from it, recognizing that, of course, there's always some influence in a commission, even when it's independent. But let's do the best we can and set the tone for the rest of the country.
Senator, before I let you go, I just want to point out one thing, a little bit of an added wrinkle that I hadn't thought of that's in this Nassau County story, the cost. The Democrats actually fought this legal battle pro bono, using pro bono counsel. The Republicans did not, and they haven't talked yet about a price tag. You have a Senator DeLon, you mentioned, he's on LAT4. He's put in an amicus brief, a front of the court brief, to asking for the dismissal of the Senate Republicans' lawsuit on that prison gerrymandering situation. Are you guys picking up the tab for that?
You guys meaning who, the Senate Democrats? No, we're not. I don't know specifically if Senator DeLon just did that using his own counsel or what specifically he did, but you raise a very interesting point. We found out not long ago that the Senate Republicans budgeted $3 million in taxpayer money to finance reapportionment legal challenges. And we would hope that they would be fair about this and make sure that both sides have access to funding for legal assistance. Otherwise, the disparity that the majority constantly seeks to exploit would be exacerbated if they're spending $3 million public dollars on lawyers and not allowing the minorities to have any legal representation at all. So hopefully that will be remedied.
Right, and it would be particularly bad if you were forced to spend political money, because then when you go back for the battle in 2012 under the new lines to fight for the majority, you would be at a significant disadvantage, and you're already struggling to overcome your debt. So we're going to keep tabs on this issue. Senator Mike Gianaris, I want to thank you very much for making time for us this evening. It is good to see you.
Thank you, Liz.
Now, still to come on